Hi everyone, really excited for this episode. I've got Mr. Ben Lang, prominent angel investor, one of the first people in Notion, a one-man community show. That's how I call you, behind the scenes. Ben, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to give some context for the audience. Most of this tech audience knows who you are. They might know you from Product Hunt. They might know you from, Notion. They might know you from your viral tweets, by your matchmaking skills, man. You're all over. And the first thing that I kind of want to ask you is, what's the system like? Like, how does it look like? How does your day-to-day look like? Because it really seems like you're everywhere and that you have time to do all these things, and you probably use Notion a lot.
I do use Notion a lot, and my schedule changed a lot after I left Notion. I was there for about 5 years up until a few months ago, and I was pretty heads down focused on Notion and doing some angel investing. And then when I left, I decided to just do a bunch of things, and so I've been working on. So I've been doing a bunch of angel investing as well as a couple of projects and kind of going deeper on the community side, if you will. And through that, I basically, I try to block out as much time as possible every day and just have time to focus. I keep a few blocks for calls during the afternoons, evenings, but really most of my time is just pretty heads down, building out scalable ways to support the projects I'm working on, support the communities I'm building out, and that's really how I spend most of my time.
Do you still use? Obviously, it's a rhetorical question, but do you use Notion as a productivity tool?
No, I use
your to-do list is on Notion.
Yeah, I use Notion for personal life. I use it with my wife for our relationship.
We saw that went viral.
I use it for the projects I'm working on. I collaborate with companies using it. I mean, it's definitely where I spend most of my time when I'm online.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of helping people, where is that coming from? Is that a religious thing? Is that just comes in from your personality, just being a great person? I tell you why I'm asking this. So we do PR, like I told you, for many startups, and every time there's a Product Hunt thing, we hear every founder saying, yeah, we should talk to Ben Lang, and I've reached out to you and you've helped to support some of our companies with Product Hunt. How do you have the time to do that with all those projects? Is that so? To connect that to my first question, is there a guiding light where you say you're going to be helpful with people no matter what, even if you're trading time to do that?
I mean, I try to find the highest leverage ways I can help people, and I've found that there are certain ways where I can do that, and so Product Hunt is one of them. It doesn't take me too much effort, and because I was a very early Product Hunt user, I've just been very active since the beginning, and it's very easy for me to help out with that. Versus it's not always easy for me to get on a 1 hour brainstorming call to talk about community building and marketing efforts, and I try to do that, but I definitely can't do that with all the folks that I'm chatting with. So it's just kind of finding the highest leverage ways I can continue to help people, and there's a couple ways I try to do that.
If I had to guess, I would guess that your inbox is pretty full, both on the email side and on the DM side. First of all, is that correct?
Well, I'm a big inbox zero guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
So my email is usually clean. I try every few days. Sometimes it takes some time, and I also about once or twice a day I go through Twitter and LinkedIn DMs, which I use pretty actively, and I don't inbox zero there, and then I do actually do inbox zero on WhatsApp, so which I think is a little unique. I archive all of my WhatsApp messages. I don't use iMessage because you can't archive, which isn't great, but for me WhatsApp and email are great because I just always aim to hit inbox zero and make sure anything that's left in my WhatsApp or my email are things that I need to actually work on.
I tried to do some WhatsApp inbox zero thing. So basically, I went to I tried to archive every conversation, but it kept on popping faster than it does on email. So I said so I'm just using the filter button, just filter what the new messages are. So that's what I do. But that's very impressive. How do you decide then what projects come in? So another context for the people right there. So you're very keen and you're very you quite frankly say, right out loud on LinkedIn, if it's on LinkedIn or on Twitter, that you're like actively investing in startups. And we all know that, founders, are actively pursuing fundraising. So I bet a lot of people, are reaching out to you and say, hey, listen, Ben, I have this great product, or we're working on this new startup, or this new, or this new product feature, etc. And we want you maybe, to hurdle you in. Maybe you're going to invest. And I assume that it's not easy to kind of understand which ones are worth your time or which ones aren't. How do you do that first, initial process where you decide which one is relevant and which one isn't?
Yeah, I definitely try to screen, and I try to be as communicative as I can in an async way. And so I try to be very responsive on email, Twitter, LinkedIn. That being said, like going from all those messages to calls, like I do try to kind of screen things out, just because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get anything done. And I kind of just have my own criteria for what I'm looking for, and what the types of investments I'm looking to make.
Would it be that it says that in your Notion page where you're like, hey, listen, I invest mainly in people that are direct friends of yours, or people that you have some sort of already existing working relationship? Is that true, or do you also accept new inbound from people who are like third party people who you didn't know before at all?
Yeah, it used to be mostly that. I think over the years it's evolved, and I think even one of the last investments I made was from a cold email.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't know him before. I mean, I did know some of the other folks who were investing, and we had some mutual friends, but it just came in as a cold email. So I'm more open to it now. I think just when I was starting as an angel investor 5-6 years ago, I was more kind of keen to invest in folks that I knew, just because I was still so new to figuring out how this all worked.
Do you also do other types of investing? Do you invest in the publicly traded companies or stocks or those kind of stuff as well?
I mean, I do. I definitely am not like a day trader. When I was younger, I used to spend a lot more time like buying, selling stocks. I definitely messed up a lot doing that, and I think my number one takeaway was just buy stuff and never sell, and just hold. And I wish I'd done that when I started buying things in high school, but I definitely played around too much then.
So our company, we also invest in publicly traded companies, and we also invest in startups. Now, when people ask me tips for publicly traded companies, it's not that easy, but I have some sort of a structure, strategy, template, or whatever you want to call it, of a way of looking at publicly traded companies and evaluating them, deciding if a certain investment is the right investment at that time, based on price per earnings, based on so many different factors. With private startups, especially so early, it's like people ask me, how do you decide? Well, I tell them I don't have a good answer. It's based just on intuition, only intuition. Sometimes it might be maybe I find the founder attractive in terms of their charisma, personality, etc. But it's just based on intuition. And when we started doing that, some of my employees would tell me, are you sure it's like super risky? Are you sure you want to invest in this startups? And I don't know how it'll play out, but I'm just wondering, like, on the emotional standpoint, how do you see it? How do you what's the emotional stance when you put money into a startup where like there is no way to track it unless something happens, unless they raise another round?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on how early you're investing. If you're investing in pre-seed where folks are coming with almost nothing, then yeah, I mean, it's at that point it really is just based on the team, and I think like having good intuition around strong founders, people who who you really believe will want to work and build something for the next 10 years is really the only way to look at it. I think the later it goes, the more it becomes around evaluating growth and traction and the team, but I think it just depends on what point you're investing. I'm trying to invest as early as possible, and for me, I think the earlier you are, the more it is around like the team and the founders, and kind of seeing how they come together and if they're building something that makes sense for them.
Do you like invest and forget? Is that kind of your thing, or are you just like you invest and then you kind of provide your community consulting, your marketing consulting, Like, how active are you with those investments?
Yeah, I think I definitely try to make myself as available as possible. Similarly, I try to make myself available in as high leverage way as possible. So, there are things that I'm much better at helping out with, and areas where I have more to offer, like with community marketing stuff, or with recruiting, or connecting with other angel investors, things where I just can easily help out with. I'm happy to like text with the founders I invest in, and I try to be as responsive as possible. That being said, I'm definitely, I'm not joining as like a board member and sending a weekly email checking in on things. I'm much more pull versus push.
You've been, tell me if I got this correct. You've been hopping between New York, Tel Aviv, and SF, right? San Francisco, is that correct? Those three locations were like the main pillars of your...
Most of my life, yeah.
Okay, most of your life is okay. Wait, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area, where?
In Oakland.
Oakland. Oh, I grew up in Sunnyvale.
Oh, okay, not far.
So not far away. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess we're both Warriors fans. I'm a Lakers fan actually.
No, I'm more of a Warriors fan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as of recently.
Yeah, you guys got kicked out, but yeah. But there were some very, you guys had Durant and you guys had a lot of great stuff, and you have Steph. So, how different is the tech scene between, Tel Aviv to Silicon Valley to New York? I know it's not easy sometimes to put like to kind of, it's like an emotional thing, but like, what would you say are like the differences and similarities between those three places, where I feel like those three places, maybe if you add maybe Austin, Texas, maybe now, those three places are kind of like the mecca for tech right now.
Yeah, I still would consider like New York, San Francisco, Tel Aviv as like the top three.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I think they're all just like so vibrant. There's always things happening in all three of these places. I think they each have their pros and cons. I think when you're living in San Francisco, there's more of a focus on tech, and there's not too much else. Whereas Tel Aviv, you kind of have a, there's more vibrancy, and in New York, I think is similar to that as well. But San Francisco also has like a very special energy where it just kind of feels like you're ahead, and things happen there first, and they just have so much. There's just so much there. And in Tel Aviv, like the lifestyle is amazing, and the weather is amazing, and the people are amazing, and so I think it's just a matter of like pros and cons. I mean, ultimately, my hope is to live in Israel for the long run, just because it's where I feel the most at home. But I think it's just, it's a very personal decision.
You met your wife in the States. Where did you meet her?
Yeah, we met in New York.
In New York.
Yeah.
Was it like a shidduch, or was it?
No, we met at a Shabbat dinner.
Shabbat dinner. Shabbat dinner are wonderful for matchmaking.
Yeah. Well, it didn't work out. We actually ended up walking into each other 2 years later in Jerusalem during COVID. So
really?
By chance. So it was a bit of a crazy coincidence.
Can you elaborate on this if you want? About the story? Like, I think...
I mean, that's it. We just walked into each other during COVID, and then we went out, and it worked out that time.
Amazing. Yeah. And wait, so you tried to date the first time around?
There were some misunderstandings. We didn't see each other in the end, and then 2 years later,
it worked.
Bumped into each other.
Dude, this is crazy. This is not the first time this week that I hear about that, where like a couple tried to get together, it didn't work out. Several years later, it did work out.
Yeah,
it's crazy because before this week, I wouldn't think statistically that I would hear so many incidents like that, or and. This week alone, I heard it like 3 or 4 times. Crazy.
Yeah. The crazy part, actually, I think about that whole story was when I met her the second time.
Yeah.
I had just started a dating group on Facebook.
Really?
Called CoronaCrush, and with a few friends, and it was going viral, and there were a couple thousand people in it, and in fact, there were 6 of us who started it, 6 friends, and 4 of the 6 got married within a year of starting the group.
You know why that is?
None of them from the group, though.
You know why that is?
I think it's good karma, and
it's the men above.
Yeah, exactly. All that.
Yes. I consider myself a religious person, so I don't I do like drive on Shabbat and do those kind of stuff, but I'm very spiritual and very connected to Judaism a lot, and I do I do feel that once when you want to help other people, like you tried with the Corona thing, then it comes to you, right? He takes care of you as well.
Yeah, totally.
You've been so let's talk about this matchmaking thing, because you and your wife are actively matchmaking. So you're not only an angel investor, you're an angel matchmaker as well.
I mean, the
What's the success rate on that?
It's not. I view that as more of a hobby. When folks reach out about dating, I generally just try to send them to CoronaCrush, the Facebook group, because there's 25,000 people in it now, and
Wow.
there's a couple hundred people have gotten married through it.
Wow.
That works much better than me trying to match people. We happen to have like a shared Notion page where we'll add people in who we know are single and looking, but it's a lot harder. I generally just try to post people in the Facebook group, but I think it works a lot better.
So it's just a funnel to that group.
I mean, I think so. There's, I have a short list of people I try to keep track of, and if I can, I'll make I'll try to make an intro. It's not as scalable. I definitely like things that are more scalable. and I think it's just more impactful.
I love it. So you've done the CoronaCrush, and I might be mistaken, but have you done the hummus thing, like the International Day of Hummus? That's you, right?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. So you love those kind of side projects, huh?
Yeah, I've always really been into just building like fun side projects. In fact, that's how I ended up working at Notion. So it's for me, almost every side project, or almost everything good that's happened in my life has come from a side project.
Really?
And any cool opportunity, which and they've all come from like just places of personal passion and having fun.
It's just like being in the flow, right? Going after your curiosity, your passions, and then things happen.
Just having fun, yeah.
So what happened with Notion? How did that happen? I don't think I know the story.
Notion, it's a pretty funny story. I came across Notion in 2018 on Product Hunt, and
Okay.
I downloaded it. I tried it a few times. Like I think on the third or fourth time, I was like, "Whoa, this is mind blowing!" And I tweeted my setup, like just my homepage, and a bunch of people responded and thought it was really cool. And I started. They asked if I could see more of my pages, and I started asking them to see their pages. And I was like, "Oh, this is fun. Like, why don't I just make a website where people could share their Notion pages?" And I bought NotionPages.com, and like over on a Sunday, I think I just built a little website where people could submit their Notion pages. You couldn't duplicate templates then. It was basically just people submitting screenshots of how they were using Notion. Just screenshots of how they were using Notion. This was before Notion had a template gallery. Before Notion templates didn't exist yet. Before you couldn't duplicate templates. So and I took that website, I launched on Product Hunt, it got a bunch of traction. And then over the next few months, it went from like 10,000 visits a month to like 70,000 visits a month, because Notion was starting to get some traction. And then at some point I emailed with the founder. I was like, "Hey, is there an API coming? What's going on?" And I also helped start a Facebook group for Notion users, and I was tweeting about how I was helping my friend set up Notion. I was just like, "This is so fun! It's the greatest product ever." And at some point when I was emailing the founder, I was like, "Oh, I'll be in San Francisco next week. Do you want to hang out?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, you should meet our COO, Akshay." And so I bought a ticket. I was living in New York. Then I bought a ticket to go to San Francisco, and I showed up and I met Akshay and the whole team. There were like 10-ish people. It was unlike anything I'd seen before. Their shoes were off. The office was it was so unique.
Everything was wood, right?
Just the aesthetic, and it was in, I think it was in like a house garage sort of that was converted to an office, and it was stunning. And I met Camille Ricketts, who had just joined to lead marketing at Notion, and we basically just started working together like a few days later, and I just started helping out like part-time with a few things, and then a few months later joined full-time.
So you were employee, what number would you say, like 15?
Yeah, around then. Yeah, I mean, I started working like part-time a bit, and then I joined full-time, so it was like around the 10 to 15 phase basically. It was very small.
And the company was already, they already had what, they found raised something? Was that bootstrap at that point?
They had raised a small like pre-seed round a few years back, and the company had to restart because the product didn't work out, and the two founders went to Japan and rebuilt the product. They had to lay off the team, and they had to even take a loan from one of the founders' moms, and they just totally restarted. And like the second time, it just took off. Like they found product market fit pretty quickly.
Wow. Listen, there's something interesting here in this conversation. Remember, several minutes ago, we talked about this the second time around, right? We talked about, you and your wife. the second time around. When I talked about, I heard this week, a lot about this second time around going in, and you were telling me I didn't know this, that Notion, their second launch was the one that hit. It wasn't like, so they basically they tried to launch, their product was so or whatever, there was no initial product market fit or whatever you want to, whatever lingo you want to use, but then the second time around after they went to Japan, it worked out.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
And there's a really great story if you search like Figma Notion Japan. There's a whole blog post about it on Figma's blog, and it goes really in depth, and it's a really interesting story of just a total like restart.
Notion is a multi-billion-dollar company, as a unicorn right now.
Yeah.
So and what's the deal with Japan? Because Notion aesthetics are very Japan-like aesthetics. Is that like a thing?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that like, yeah?
The two founders just really love Japan, and they wanted a place to go and work and be heads down, and so they ended up in Kyoto, Japan for 3 months. I don't think they left the house much, and they just rebuilt Notion from the ground up there.
And the way like Notion is set up, would you say that it is set up similar to how Japan people are very neatly organized and like?
I don't know if that was intentional. I mean, Ivan, the founder and CEO, is a product design engineer, unicorn. Like I've never met anyone like him, and
Wow.
the whole concept behind Notion is really from him, and I think a lot of it just came from I guess their like personal preferences and aesthetics, and it definitely resonated a lot in Japan and Korea, because those were some of the places where Notion has gotten the most traction in the world. I think people just love Notion there.
People love Notion everywhere. You guys have been so remarkable on the marketing and community front, and kudos to you. I'm sure you had major influence on that. And, when I look at what you guys have done, if it's through this like viral influencer thing where basically everyone on YouTube is using Notion and talking about Notion and using Notion for the Notion, it's like I told someone, I don't remember when, but I told them it's like this funny thing with Notion is that it seems like people are making a Notion template on how to run their Notion tutorials, on Notion. So it's like it's like this.
That was all intentional, by the way. Totally, yeah. It was a lot of like thought out
it's
ideas.
Crazy, it's like
Yeah.
it's like the movie. It's like the movie Inception,
Yeah.
where it's like a dream inside a dream. So it's like in Notion, it's the same thing. It's like a Notion board inside a Notion board talking. So it's crazy stuff, and like a lot of I didn't think that. I knew like creators would use Notion. I knew that like individuals would use Notion, families would use Notion, utilize Notion, but I didn't know that like I didn't know it would compete so heavily with a Monday or with like a project management tool for like enterprise companies. And there you have it. Lots of startups, lots of big companies are using Notion as their day-to-day platform. That's very impressive.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really it's such a unique product.
Do you think it helped your productivity, the way you run your day? Do you feel like pre-Notion and post-Notion you're a more productive individual?
I think the beauty of Notion is this whole idea that you build your own software with it. Like you have these blocks, and you create whatever it is you want Notion to do, and it's not this rigid software that tells you how to use it. And Notion works differently for everyone. It's about finding what works for you. And I just found what worked for me. It's not, some people will look at it and be like, this is so simple. This is not so sophisticated. And some people look like, this is crazy. But for me, it hits the spot and it works really well for me. And it's just about finding that, I think. And if that helps you, with your flow and your day-to-day life, then that's incredible. I never found that with any other software. I had tried before. I had used Wunderlist, and I had tried Evernote, and I had tried Asana, and I just never found it. And this worked for me.
Do you use a pen and paper from time to time as well?
I do from time to time. Sometimes I enjoy it, but it's definitely not my source of truth.
You mentioned that Notion helps like with your creativity and your flow and your day-to-day. What other things, except of this piece of software, what kind of helps you spark that creativity? Is there any practices that you do on a daily basis that kind of ground you, focus you?
Yeah, I mean, I am like an observant practicing Jew, so I do in the morning. I do put on tefillin and I pray, and I find that to be really
That is amazing.
really great. And
Yeah.
I have a couple people I learn different areas of Judaism with on a weekly basis. So I try usually once a day to have one of these learning experiences, and I find that to be really amazing. And then beyond that, I try to do yoga and swim and things that that keep my body active. So those are all really great. And for me, I think just like having time to just focus and like be on my computer or whatever it might be, and I think that is always really really impactful. Like I've had periods in my life where I was just on calls all day and not able, like I just found I wasn't able to get anything done. Like sometimes I just need to like sit in a room for weeks at a time, for months, for days, whatever it might be, and just like have time to just focus. And I'm very lucky to be in a position to be able to do that now.
Deep work.
Yeah,
Get into that deep work state.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just listen to music and just get stuff done.
Is there any individuals? It could be entrepreneurs. It could be artists. It could be musicians. Could be athletes that kind of like inspire you. That you think about them, like they inspire your work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like I sometimes think about this more on a, like, from a Jewish perspective. Like, I've always been so inspired by the Rebbe of Lubavitch, who I think was one of the greatest, entrepreneurs of all time. And, being able to influence people and to move all over the world and create these homes. My wife and I have traveled a lot over the past few years, and we've been to Peru and to Japan and to Taiwan and all these places, and there's just always a Chabad, and I don't think I don't think there's any organization that's been able to get people to pack up and live their entire lives in service of other people. Like, it's just unbelievable. And so that every time I travel, I'm like so inspired by what those Chabad rabbis are doing with their families.
That is amazing. Like, so I go to I try to go daily. I wouldn't say daily, but like Sunday till Thursday probably. I go to Chabad every day.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and I put tefillin and talk to the rabbi and just like feel that warmth. And just like every time that I go into Chabad, I'm like, these people are so remarkable, and there's the service that they're giving other people. It's unbelievable, and this is the people that that make they make your soul expand. You feel at home in those places. You can be in New York, you could be in LA, you could be in Beijing, you can be wherever, and there's a Chabad and you feel that presence. So
Yeah.
that is definitely amazing, and I'm very blessed to have Chabad like 500 meters from my house. So it's amazing. Do you have any books or kind of movies or stuff like that have inspired your journey, that you feel have been like really contributed to the way you think and look at things?
Any books or movies? I mean,
Obviously the Bible,
yeah,
which is the most important book in my opinion, obviously, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy biographies. I read a lot of biographies, and the most recent one I think I read was the new Elon Musk one by Walter Isaacson, and and I really enjoyed that. I've read a bunch of others, Walter Isaacson's, and other ones. I actually read 3 or 4 about the Rebbe in the past few years, and like just that I found that really inspiring. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely some like authors and podcasters that I really like listening to, who bring on great guests. Like I like listening to The Knowledge Project by Shane Parrish, and I like listening to some Lex Friedman interviews, not all of them. Sometimes I like listening to Sam Harris's interviews. So
Sam Harris is an atheist.
Yeah. I don't fully, on the religious side, not necessarily, but I do enjoy hearing some of his philosophy. So yeah, I kind of have a mix of
Jordan Peterson.
books.
You listen
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Peterson?
I liked 12 Rules for Life. Those are the kinds of things that I definitely incorporate into my life as well. I'm as people sometimes would tell me, it's obvious, but I'm a Virgo, and so having rules and order is a big part of my lifestyle. And so 12 Rules for Life is obviously works very well with that.
Someone who's been in the entrepreneur, so you've got this, I call this a heat map. So you have this presence among other entrepreneurs like yourself. First of all, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? I would consider yourself an entrepreneur for sure.
Yeah.
Is that how you kind of like put yourself out there? I'm an entrepreneur.
I mean, right now, not necessarily, because most of what I do is angel investing.
Right.
But I did start a company like many years ago that's still going strong. I started with my dad, and he runs it today.
Really?
We worked on it for a few years, built out a team, raised some money. I ended up leaving at a certain point, and my dad is he's the CEO, and they're doing well. And so I did have the experience of raising money from a founder's perspective and starting something, and so I think I did go through a chunk of that.
Okay, so that's interesting. I meant to ask you another question, but I think this might be an even better question. So, you left that company that you did with your dad. I didn't even know that. I knew about that company. I didn't know your dad was running it as well. And you also left Notion, after 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah.
5 years. Was that?
Close to 5.
Close to 5. The question is why? Because, Notion is a pretty dynamite force in its industry, and I'm sure you probably had a nice incentive to stay there a bit longer. Why? Where's that coming from? It might be a personal thing that you don't want to answer completely, but you can take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just generally speaking, finding there's a right time and a right place for everything, and
Right.
and at a certain point in life, you hit a moment where you're just like, okay, I maximize this experience, and it's time for the next phase of my life, and that's just happened in certain points in my life. I think I'm very grateful to have had those experiences.
So now moving to another question. So you've been connected to many entrepreneurs. Some of them are probably early founders, founders of early startups. Some of them are more mature, founders. You're also connected to investors. Where do a lot has happened in the industry in the last 2 years. They weren't the easiest. Several years, I think, in the tech industry. First, you had the whole tech industry in a whole, going through what it went, with valuations being cut pretty aggressively. Then you had all the political stuff that happened internally in Israel, and then you had the catastrophe of October 7th. Not a single word that I can say can describe the terror and torture that happened at that day. When you talk to entrepreneurs, what's the stamina like? How do you think they feel? Like, do you still feel that anger, anxiety, feeling of maybe depression? What do you feel when you talk to people in
Israel?
In Israel, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, definitely a mix. I'm fortunate enough that 2 days a week I brought together a group of mostly repeat founders and engineering leaders who all want to start companies and don't know what they want to start or who they want to work with. And so I got a workspace for the 15 of us to kind of just co-work together and explore. And it's in Sarona, and so I'm around a bunch of these people who are going through, I think, a really hard phase of figuring out, like, I want to start something, I just don't know what, I don't know with who. Like, it's confusing, it's hard, it's challenging, and I'm deeply inspired by them, like, going through what I think is such a hard phase, and knowing that they have like a long journey ahead, and so I get very energized by being around them. So I think it's a mixed bag. Some people, I think it's incredibly difficult, and some people are just kind of persevering through it. And I think I'm just very fortunate to be in a position where I'm around a lot of these people who are kind of pushing through it and just trying to forge their own path.
So with the entrepreneurs that work with us and entrepreneurs that are friends of mine, entrepreneurs that I invested in, and just people that we collaborate in. So, after October 7th, I think a big part of our conversations was talking about mental health, for example, right? Talking about, the mental health both of the founders and also the mental health of the employees, the mental health of the employees' families, which are a big part of the company. Nobody thinks about that, but that's true. The family of your employees, the family of the founders are as connected to the livelihood of the company as, as anyone else, right? And I feel like the mental health thing has been something that has been not talked about previously as much, and now it's getting more mainstream. And I do feel like once we have those sessions with fellow entrepreneurs and we all talk about, the anxieties, the fears, and just like helping each other's out. So it helps in so many fronts. First, this bonding, right? This bonding with other people. So, you bond with those entrepreneurs and they know they're not alone, and that gives strengths. And then the second thing is on the practical thing. A lot of what you do, right, is those connections, helping, people, connecting people to other people, connecting, founders to investors, connecting engineers to companies, right? I saw that what you've been doing pretty remarkably recently is you've been doing some sort of kind of like a who's hiring on LinkedIn, right? Those went very viral recently. And I feel like those, things that might be conceived as like small gestures, this can mean a lot to a lot of people, and hopefully more people can like join this kind of movement and help each other out.
Yeah, totally.
Do you feel that once you do some sort of those LinkedIn or Twitter posts, do you see those, that kind of like impact or, butterfly effect happening, as the moment you kind of release that post? Would you say there's that kind of feeling?
I don't think in like the short term, but I think in the long term, I'm always surprised at like what a small thing could do. Like even just a few days ago, someone emailed me being like, "Hey, like thanks for sending my resume out to this group," or I don't remember what it was exactly, and like he said, "I found my job." Like that was great. And a week before that, someone told me that someone that they were working with actually he had found his first job at a company that went public and totally changed his life through a project I'd worked on like 10 years ago. And
wow.
It's just like, I never heard that story, and it was so cool just hearing that and really meaningful. So I don't, it's definitely less like the short term, but more like I do really believe in kind of the, I agree with you that like these small things, you don't know what kind of impact they'll have, and it could really help people in meaningful ways.
So you said a project you worked 10 years ago. So may I ask, how old are you, Ben Lang?
I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay,
Yeah.
so 30. So you've been actually since you were a kid, right? You did like eBay stuff, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. When did you start like this whole entrepreneur thing?
I started when I was like in high school, just selling stuff on eBay, and then I got into like building websites and writing for blogs, and afterwards I ended up joining the army here, and
You've been in 8200, right?
Yeah,
My brother
yeah,
as well.
yeah, and then I started working on all kinds of side projects, and so I've been having fun for a while.
playing around for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, playing around and scoring a triple double, and like they say, yeah, Stephen Curry played around and got a triple double. So, you've been super generous with your time. I do have several more questions. Okay, so some of them will feel maybe like more rapid fire questions, but
Sure.
I think it'll be fun for you to answer. My first question is this, and this is actually something that I'm asking for my own incentives, my own purposes. How do you consume the news today? Like when you want to know something about something, how do you consume the news? Do you Google it? Do you Yahoo Finance it? Like what's kind of like your flow in terms of news consumption? Is it going to Twitter? Is it going to LinkedIn and seeing what do you get on the feed? I'm really curious about that.
I definitely primary source is Twitter. I do use a plugin on my browser that blocks Twitter, LinkedIn, any news site, etc. for most of the day, because otherwise I'll get lost in it. And then for searching things, I've been using recently more a product called Perplexity, which I like, and I like that it it summarizes and kind of presents information in a nice way, and Arc browser does something similar. So those are like the two kind of search engines that I've been playing with that I think are a more futuristic look at what Google will probably look like at a certain point.
Okay, that's interesting. In terms of like the favorite sports activity, what do you do? What's your favorite?
Favorite is probably yoga or swimming. Maybe both.
You do both on a day-to-day basis?
Not on a day-to-day. I try to swim a few times a week and then do yoga once a week, like a class. I hope to do more and more of that over time. It's just, it's hard. The consistency is the hard part.
Who is your favorite Israeli entrepreneur?
Favorite Israeli entrepreneur? I've always... Oh, shoot, I need to think about this one. Can this get edited? Israeli entrepreneur.
There can be several.
Okay. Sorry, I'm back. Favorite Israeli entrepreneur, probably... recently I've been really inspired by Eyal Waldman, founder of Mellanox that sold to NVIDIA. And I think just what he's really impact he's had on NVIDIA and that the rise of that company, I think Mellanox is a huge part of that. And just his own personal story that's just been so like devastating, and, him like persevering and sharing and, being open. I think everything he's done for Israel has been just like really, really unbelievable.
You've spent time in New York. Have you met Adam Neumann in any circumstance?
No, I never met him.
He should be an impressive individual to talk to. What do you think about Wiz, Asaf Rappaport's company? Isn't that insane?
They're incredible. What they're doing, I think they're definitely one of the most inspiring companies in Israel.
They just recently today, I read that they're starting to sell secondary shares from there. That was reported today. Okay, two last questions for you today. When you look at what's going on in the world right now, I'm not trying to sound dramatic or anything, but there's many things going on, right? There's many plays going on from different fields. There's the Russia-Ukraine war. There's obviously what's going on with the radical Islam that's been kind of, not easy to deal with, especially for the Western countries. What makes you feel safe? Is it that connection to a higher presence? Does that make you feel safe?
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, I think one of the key differences about being in Israel versus being in the U.S. or anywhere else is like here, at least I know, who has my back and who doesn't. And I think people in the U.S. and Europe are now realizing they don't really know, like, it could be your neighbor. And I've heard of so many families and friendships just being torn apart because of differing views and not supporting each other. And here, here you just know, like, yeah, these people have my back and these people don't. And that I think I think it just makes you a much more sane person.
My last question for you today is what is the number one tip you would give fellow entrepreneurs? If you only had to give one thing. They tell you, listen, Ben, you can only tell them one thing for today.
I think work on something you're actually passionate about. I think it's easy to kind of look for some random problem, money opportunity, whatever it might be. And I think if you're going to spend the next 10, 20 years building something, like I think you'll have a much better time if it's something you actually deeply care about and as a part of your DNA. And that's kind of the philosophy I've tried to live by up until now. And I think it's just a great way to live if you can.
10, 20 years, you mean? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they think about their sprints in terms of 3-year sprints.
Yeah, I don't. To me, if you're starting a company, it's going to be 10, hopefully 20 years. But I think if you're looking at starting a company for 3 years, like I don't think that's the same thing.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time. People can go out check Ben on Twitter. What is the official handle?
You could just go to my website. It's benlang.me, and I have the links to
follow him. I
social.
really suggest you guys follow him on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You've done remarkable work, and
Thank you.
keep on doing great work, man. Keep on doing that. You're helping so many people and uplifting yourself while you're uplifting so many other individuals and companies, obviously. So keep on what you're doing, man. People are watching. People are paying attention. And yeah,
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It means a lot.
Thanks, man.